Africa is a blessed place. Um, as we have all noticed, in the West, the soils are exhausted. I'm sitting in China. The soils are exhausted. The soils are poisoned. The environment is not as natural, or better put it, organic, as what we have back home in Africa. If you go to the marketplaces, if you go to the marketplaces in the West, or the rest of in other places in the world, you would notice that the food that is being sold there is sold in grades. Food is already being sold in grades. Selling food in grade already means that the world is, if you extrapolate that kind of a graph, it means that the world is tilting to a direction towards certain particular type of foods. The more people get educated about the effects of genetically modified food, the more people get educated about the effects of the remains of fertilizers in food, because science has, of course, proven that when fertilizers, some fertilizers are used on foods, these fertilizers don't really, the plants don't really process the fertilizers to the point where it will not be harmful to the human being who will eat the food. So because of that, remember that most of those plants are genetically modified. Because when we talk of organic foods, there are basically two categories. We talk about the seeds could be genetically modified but grown organically, or they could be genetically modified and still grown with fertilizers. So you see those categories, you get to realize that the foods that we eat, progressively people get educated about the dangers of the foods, how these foods can actually change our genetic makeup, our DNA. It's proven scientifically that the food we eat can determine the way our children or our children's children will be. Now, when this knowledge is becoming available out there, what happens is that people will start tilting, because currency is all about perception. People will start tilting towards consuming organic foods. There, Africa comes in, starts to produce. So, and that is the more reason why Africa must begin to protect our natural environment. Africa must begin to protect our seeds. Africa must begin to protect our environment from pollution. So, because if we can preserve our natural environment for a few more years, like I said the other time, organic food from Africa will sell as a currency in the years to come. So that currency will be the food currency, and there is no other currency that will beat food currency. So Africans need to understand the value of the agricultural sector in Africa. If at this point in time we are still talking about 70% food wastage post harvest, it's really shocking. It's really shocking that people will invest so much in food cultivation, that people invest, put in so much effort, even take loans, and at the end of the day, 70%, about 70% of the food is wasted. It means that that's just in sub-Saharan Africa. It means that there is a lot of work to do. It means that there is a huge opportunity. Let's not just look at it as something is wrong. Let's look at it as there is an opportunity. And then we come together in little groups, or if we want to do our individual investments, we go into the sector and we identify some of these food substances and identify the machines, the technology available, affordable, that we can be able to use and process these foods and make them available around the year by increasing the shelf lives, by processing, by transforming them. So this will help a lot. So that is basically what I meant by saying that the organic food in Africa actually is going to become a currency because people are getting to know. And Africans should, my problem is not even just people getting to know, but Africans should be recognizing this and preserving the value. Because if we allow our lands in Africa to be bought by Chinese, if we allow our lands in Africa to be bought by French people and they come and do the cultivation, they will feed us in our land. The typical example is the um the biogas project in La Côte d'Ivoire. It's very shocking that about 75% of the biogas plant in Côte d'Ivoire is owned by French companies. It doesn't make sense. The organic substances don't come from France; they come from Côte d'Ivoire. What produces the energy, the matter that produces the energy, does not come from France. It comes from Côte d'Ivoire. So how come 75% of such an installation, a major installation, as a matter of fact, estimations show that that is supposed to be the largest biogas plant on the continent of Africa, but it doesn't belong to Africa. It's closely followed by the one in Kenya. So what we're saying here is Africans should begin to own what belongs to Africa. Probably the French company just has one or two machines. Biogas plant doesn't really need any complex machines. It doesn't. It doesn't really need any complex machines. These are things that communities can begin to do. Individuals can begin to do for communities. If we are in diaspora, we can begin to afford this for our little communities. These are not rocket science machines. These are machines that communities, because one of the major problems in Africa is that communities sit and wait. So they're always waiting for something. Communities sit and wait for the government. The government sits and wait for aid. And at the end of the day, the whole of Africa is waiting. But if communities started by setting up small biogas plants that can serve their little corners, their little machines that they're processing, they're transforming the little food where they are. If all these communities could do that, the pressure on the national grid is going to reduce. So it's kind of an indirect way decentralize the energy sector in African states or in African countries. But if all these communities begin to sit down and wait for the government to do something, that is what's going to push the governments to go get loans that they cannot pay back. And at the end of the day, they're going to give out the part of the country to strangers. And that's the problem of Africa. So at this point in time, like I continue to say, I continue to encourage communities. I continue to encourage brothers and sisters in the diaspora who have seen things work elsewhere, who have seen things working elsewhere, to try and see how we can deploy some of these available technologies, even if we have to reverse engineer a lot of them to make it work in the context of Africa. It is going to be a very good place to start. It is going to be very helpful, and it is going to be sustainable, because with agriculture, with investments in agro-processing and renewable energy, these are very sustainable investments. We are not just reverse engineering the machines and contextualizing them to allow them work in Africa, but we are indirectly, sustainably transferring the technology into Africa. Because when those machines are in Africa 1, 2, 3 times, the youth of Africa will begin to build the same machines. Chinese people did not learn how to build these machines from space. They learned it by reverse engineering the same machines from elsewhere. So it is time that Africans begin to understand that by the time these machines are in Africa, it wouldn't take 5, 10 years before Africans begin to build better forms or better models of these machines. That is how technology is generally being transferred. It's being transferred in a very positive and sustainable manner, and that's exactly what we are doing. So I continue to encourage Africans across the globe, especially our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, because they have seen these things work and they know the impact of these things on society, and they have the possibility and the intellect to discuss and see how we can be able to step by step transform the lives of our local population. Thank you.